So where I had no support, I was able to provide that support to some of the women who came after I did.
So full circle. Yeah. And how do you feel about that?
Oh, it's great, because I was able to, to prepare them for some of what, that I had experienced, and also to support them in terms of what they were experiencing at the time. That because some of them had no choices because they were scared of being deported, and some people really didn't want to go back home. I mean, the worst thing that could happen is that you go back home. In terms of from their opinion at that point, because some of them had children, and that was one of the other things that some of the immigration officers would tell them, and before they arrived, that they shouldn't, in order for them to get through their application, they shouldn't tell that they have children. And so they would say that they don't have children. And then when they came and they would apply, they would settle in and they're doing well and they applied or probably had landed immigrant status, then they would say, yes, I did have children, and then they would be threatened with deportation. And also they also were not told about the education that they could do, even though they were here not as landed immigrants. They could take some courses, but number one, the employer wouldn't allow them to take the courses, and number two, they had to report to, if you left a job that you were in, that you should stay in at least 6 months. If you leave it before that time period, then you have to report to immigration. And each time you leave a job, you have to report, because you got to get a job within the next period of time, so that otherwise you got to leave because you had no status. The employer would use that as well as a threat, against them. Also, they got paid very little. There was some rule about how much they should be paid, but they never got paid what they're supposed to pay, because immigration had a scale, but it was left to the discretion of the employers. And the women don't want to complain, because if they complain, there's a threat again. So I think it's important to really make the distinction between when people came in earlier, even when people were coming even when the nannies were British, there were totally different rules. And then when the women from the Caribbean started to come in, it was another set of rules. And then later on, in the 70s and later, there's a different set of rules. So the advocating and the networking started by some of us with different organizations like Intercede and all those different organizations to look at changing policies. So I think another part that is really would be important at this point for this project would be look at the comparing and contrasting between those times, but also what is occurring now, what has changed, and what kind of impact is that having on the women who are still doing that kind of work. Do they have rights now? Like, we didn't have any rights when we came. Do they have rights now? Are there policies that are more protective of them, for them now? Can they apply from within? These different things. I think this project is a lot bigger than us, and I think it's really important for people to be aware, and there isn't a lot of work or research that have been done about these people who have contributed heavily to the economy and the labor market in Canada and in Ottawa. For me, it's important for my children to know about my history, where I came from, and I think it's essential for the younger generation to know that there are this group of people who came and paved the way to make things easier for them, so they had that opportunity to make a choice right now. So I'm doing my part. So I'm doing my part by educating my own children and the people with who I come in contact, and I'm putting mine in writing. I'm writing my book. I'm writing, and I'm starting from here. So it's going to be essential, and I want in that when someone read that book, I want them to be motivated and to be inspired to say, okay, my story that she's talking about me. This is my story, and I want to tell it.
Your advice to the next generation, based on your life experience, from going from being a domestic to a social worker to a nominee for the Women of Distinction Awards.
Mm-hmm. My words of wisdom to the younger generation is don't let anybody tell you you can't. You know, shoot for the stars and be the best of who you can be, and you take full advantage of the opportunities that are available to you, because it can take you wherever it is you want to be.